Welcome everybody to the Real Dealz podcast, one of the top-ranked real estate investing podcasts for the last 7 years. This is the place to be for investing strategies you can actually use, expert interviews, and of course, some good old-fashioned entertainment. Now, here's your host for the show, Elliot, the REI guy, Smith. Welcome everybody out there in listener land. This is episode 404 of the Real Dealz podcast, and I am your guest host from Christmas past. I'm back this week for many of you that maybe have been listening to the show for the last year. Hell, you might not even know who I am. Anyway, I'm Tucker Merrihew. I'm your guest host. I was the original host of this show many years ago, and then I stepped away from the microphone and I handed it off to Elliot, and I have to say he's been doing a fantastic job. I know many of you guys are thoroughly enjoying the shows that he's putting out. I've been getting messages from, many listeners that have listened to me, and now they've listened to him for a sustained amount of time, and they're really enjoying the content that he's putting out, the way that he's putting it out. And so I just want to thank all of you guys that, stuck with the show, listened to him as he kind of grew into his own microphone personality. And now he's ripping, he's doing a great job, and he's putting out some amazing content. So great to hear that he's doing a great job from you guys. But also from my perspective, I think he's doing really well as well. So beyond that, he asked me to come on this week because I have a project that I've been working on. And, normally he does the intros for the shows, but we did a long kind of sit down, candid conversation where we talk about what it is that I've been working on kind of behind the scenes that is about to kind of come up to the surface. You guys out there, in the world of real estate investing, you'll start to see it. We're going to put this project out to the world. And it's something that, to be totally honest, it's taken a lot more time, effort, and energy than I ever thought it would take to do it. But the reason being is because we're trying to do something that's never been done in our space. And essentially what it is it's a podcast, right? I started this show. I started our local show called the Portland Real Estate Podcast, a number of years back. And both shows were, they had a great run. With me as host, and now they're having another great run with new hosts in both cases. So we started those shows and they even continued without me, which is awesome, by the way. But this new show is a different format completely. That's what really makes it different. The other thing is that some of you may know, some of you may not. I've had some pretty major life changes over the last, 4 to 5 months. And even before that, really, as I was planning for them. But I moved from Lake Oswego, Oregon to Naples, Florida. And so now I'm here in Naples and I'm restarting the business. I'm about 4 months in at this point, just a little shy of 4 months, kind of getting my bearings and just restarting life really at 42 years old. So I went from a place where, I climbed about as high up the mountain as I could climb in terms of the single family game. We built, $4 to $5 million single family homes in Lake Oswego, which, there are more expensive houses there, but not many builders, or if any, are building any more than that. I know one now that maybe because of the market, but we basically hit the ceiling of where we could go to. And so, I wanted to go someplace, number one, that was sunny, had palm trees, it was warm, but also a place that we could kind of continue to grow, and push the boundaries of what we do. So we're here, and in order to get to there and grow, I first have to start down here. So I'm starting all over again at 42. And that's the basis of this project that, we've been working on. And, myself, Dan, many of you guys know Dan, who's behind the scenes that produces all these episodes and puts them out. He's been working with me side by side. And then we have kind of a secret weapon as well. Another producer for, arguably, the biggest real estate investing show out there on iTunes. And I'm not going to say his name or the name of the show, but, he is part of this production as well. And so his job is to make this as good as it can possibly be and take my skills and Dan's skills and refine them. And, I say it in the show here with Elliot, it's kind of a good to great moment where we take a skill set that we're really good at and we try and become great at it. And that's what we're doing with this new project. And so without further ado, I'll kind of tell you guys where you can find out more information about it, what it is. It's a podcast, as I mentioned. It's the best way to describe it is it's like a reality show via audio. And so you guys get to see my life in audio format, a lot of which is real, actual conversations that have gone on with all different types of people that, I come across through this journey. The show is called The Journey, by the way. You can find it on iTunes. We have the trailer out, I believe, right now. We'll be dropping episode 1 in probably 2 to 3 weeks. But it basically follows me from before I left Lake Oswego, getting ready, doing all the things that I needed to do in order to essentially shut down a business there and open up a business here. And I drove across the entire country. I had to get my Florida general contractor's license. I had to start a marketing machine here. I had to try and start to find deals. I had to shut down everything I had going there. So just a lot of stuff. And so by choosing the format that we chose, which is basically an audio, reality show, for lack of a better term, you guys get kind of a front row seat of what it's like to pick up and move across the country and restart my life at 42 years old. So we're super excited about it. It's going to be probably somewhere around a 10 episode season. The way we're setting it up is it's a season. And, every episode we put a lot of energy and effort into so that it's not only entertaining, but it's also educational. And, hopefully it has you, thoroughly engaged throughout. So each episode is going to be about 25 minutes, give or take. So not a ton of time, but we're super excited to be putting those out to the world here very soon. And we hope that you guys all go over, subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, or wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, and make sure that you listen to the trailer. And of course, the first few episodes as we release them. The other way that you can get notified, and I would strongly suggest that you do that in case you can't find the trailer for whatever reason, is go to www.thejourney.biz. And just put in your name, email address, cell phone number if you want to, and we'll ping you and let you know as soon as we release the first few episodes. But like I said, it's something that we have never done or that's never been done before in our space in terms of the production style, storytelling. Most of these podcasts are very kind of question answer. You've got an interviewer and an interviewee, maybe a few monologue shows, but this is very highly produced, very much about storytelling, and it's very much about reality. And so I think it's going to be a great project, and I hope that you guys like it a lot. But without further ado, I also thank you very much for listening to Elliot, supporting the show, continuing to give him and myself great feedback. And I know that he's going to continue to do an amazing job and bring you guys, the best content that he can. So without further ado, as I said before, and I'll say it again, this is my interview with Elliot.
All right, Real Dealz podcast listeners, I want to talk quickly about our show's sponsor, Iron Bridge Lending. If you guys have not reached out to Iron Bridge already to talk to them about funding some of your upcoming flip projects, I highly encourage you to do so. I've known the owner of Iron Bridge for a very long time. I've personally borrowed millions of dollars from them over the years to do a number of different projects, and I can say without a doubt, they are the best hard money lending company I have ever come across, and that is the reason why they are the sole sponsor of this show. I've had a lot of other companies reach out to me and want to sponsor this show, but I just won't do it. I feel like I need to be genuine in who we have sponsoring the show, and it needs to be somebody that I've personally done a ton of business with. So I personally vouch for their ability to be the best, hands down, in the world of hard money lending. You won't find better programs, you won't find better terms, and they're lending or will be lending in over 20 states. So chances are, if you're hearing this in whatever state you're in, it's definitely worth it to check out their website, reach out to them, see if they're lending in your state, and if they are, I would absolutely encourage you to do business with them. Another very cool thing to note is that they have a program for most rehabs where you can actually borrow up to 90% of the purchase price. Now, this is given the fact that you are actually buying a deal, which if you're listening to the show, that means you probably are. But if you have an actual deal on the table, they'll fund up to 90% of your purchase price, and they'll even give you rehab funds on top of that, which means that it only takes 10% down to get into a project, which is unbelievable in the hard money world. So do yourself a favor, reach out to Iron Bridge Lending, have a conversation with them, see if they're a good fit for you and for your next project. I can guarantee you that you'll be happy that you did.
Special week here, guys. Very serious week. We got the Godfather himself back with us on the mic to talk about some of the cool stuff he's been doing since he relinquished the mic to me. And pretty excited to have you back on the show, Tucker. What's going on?
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Lots going on, really. A little bit of change of latitude, I think, since the last time we talked. A little bit more tan. I've got a little bit more usable pool in my backyard that I'm staring at right now with palm trees behind it. And I've got a little bit more of a black eye for those of you watching the video.
Yeah, you were down in like the the deep South Florida, right? Got in a bar fight, correct?
Yeah, I got a little lippy and, somebody whacked me, but no, I still like to try and play hoops, and I'm 42 now, and my mind thinks it can keep up with younger bucks, but my body sometimes can't. So this is an elbow of an old guy chasing a young guy.
He must have jumped like 6 inches higher than you and just got you perfect.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So awesome. So you moved to Florida because you haven't been on the show, I think, for almost a year now. So I don't know if everybody follows you. Why are you in Florida?
Well, I left Portland for a few reasons. One is sunshine and palm trees. 2 is my dog howling in the background, so forgive me if you hear that. Portland just turned into a really challenging place on many levels. And really what it came down to is I figure, I'm 42 now, as I mentioned, which probably sounds really old to some of you guys listening. It's not, though, by the way. When you get there, you'll look back and be like, I'm not that old. But I've probably got 10 good solid years of like high energy productivity left, right? You get in your 50s, you kind of, maybe you keep going strong, but most people kind of take a step back or whatever. So I got 10 years of like high growth, high energy time left. And I started looking around. I was like, okay, do I want to spend these next 10 years in a place that has got all these problems going on and all these challenges and really just it's a city that won't fight for itself? And ultimately the decision I came to is no, or we as a family came to is no. And so I decided to come down here to what is, I guess the beacon of freedom, Florida, and, restart the entire company. And to this point, it's been a really great experience, and we've got a lot of traction quickly, and basically took the business that I was running in Portland, and it's changed a little bit just because the opportunities here are slightly different. But, the underlying fundamentals of it are the same strategies in terms of lead or deal acquisition. But, we've started to ramp it up. I'm working still in a home office, so I don't have a normal office yet, but we're getting to that point. But, slow and steady wins the race, and I'm kind of rebuilding the business from scratch down here in Naples, Florida.
Nice. Now, Joni was ready to go years ago, right? You were the holdout.
Yeah, she would have left me 10 years ago for Florida. Now, probably... She's been wanting to go for a while. We went back and forth on Arizona and Florida, as you know, and, I really liked Scottsdale, Paradise Valley. But, in hindsight, I'm glad we came here versus there. I like Scottsdale a lot, but it definitely has more of like a Lambo and, clubbing vibe to it. And
that's why Chrissy doesn't like it. She doesn't want to be keeping up with the Joneses the whole time, feeling like.
Right. And this is more like a Jimmy Buffett lifestyle down here is what everybody calls it. So definitely a different flavor. I think it's more for me, honestly. I mean, I'm not a Lambo and clubs kind of guy at this point in my life, but
were you ever a Lambo and clubs kind of guy?
I mean, I had an expensive sports car at one point, but
Audi AR8 or whatever that you never drove.
Which I spent way too much money on, and I didn't get near the enjoyment for the price tag out of it. So I learned at that point that I don't know. Cars are fairly. I mean, I like nice cars. Don't get me wrong, but they're not like. I think you have to be like super passionate about cars to really justify spending the money on the super nice ones. Otherwise, I think they're kind of just a waste, to be honest with you. So I'm kind of
my truck. I enjoy my truck because it's nice that I bought that brand new F-150 last year with the AMC deal. But I enjoy it because I drive it every day and I get in it. It's nice, it's easy, it's whatever, right? It's got all the bells and whistles. That's nice because it's just a daily driver. But it's like it looks kind of cool, but I don't give a shit past that. I mean,
well, GameStop paid for it too, right? So
yeah, AMC paid for it. Yeah, well, technically, AMC paid for it, but then about 6 months later, I got a little aggressive trading some S&P call options with Chrissy and my call magic money, and so I gave some of that truck back. So
I have a truck too, and I love my truck. We have a really cool 67 Bronco that was restored that's actually being delivered, I think, tomorrow or the next day. And that'll be a cool car to drive. And I'll like that one, but Joni wanted that. So, we got that, but I'm kind of, I like nice trucks and things like that, but like I could give a shit about owning a Lambo at this point in my life, to be honest with you.
Now you were dead set on Arizona. And so what was it last year? We were talking, I went to Florida and I'm like, went to Naples. And I'm like, Tucker, you got to check out Naples. Like you got to check out Florida. Like I went through the whole state. I'm like, dude, you want to build? I told Greg too, like, there's so many one, everybody's so old, but I'm like, there's opportunity everywhere here. I don't know if that's what got you to go there. I felt like it kind of was like, because you hadn't planned it, but then you're like, hey, a couple months later, like, we're going to go to Florida.
I mean, it definitely factored in. I mean, hearing that, and it just reinforced a lot of things, right? I came here and I was like, man, there is a lot of opportunity here, no question. Naples is an interesting place because historically, the joke has been it's heaven's waiting room, right? It's where all the old people go to die. And
68 is the average age, I think.
Yeah, but here's the thing that's happening in Southwest Florida, right? From Fort Myers down to Bonita Springs, all the way down to Naples, and maybe some of Marco Island. Marco Island is definitely old people, but that's the furthest south little island just south of Naples. But from Naples up to Fort Myers, there's a lot of young people that are moving in here. And so just for example, my son, he's in, not even kindergarten, he's in whatever the hell you call it before that, I should know, but
preschool?
Yeah, preschool. Yeah. And so all the preschools are full here, right? Where they weren't before. And so, there's a big influx of younger people that are moving here, on my street here, everybody on the entire street, with the exception of the old gal that's lived here for like 20 years, they're all 37 to 50. So, and they've all, either got little kids like me or their kids are slightly older, but I think there's been a big influx of people that have done the exact same thing that I've done, which is move here because they're like, damn, this is a really cool place. And so it is transitioning, I think, from being predominantly just old people waiting to die to there are some old rich people waiting to die, but then there's also a lot of young people that are kind of, revitalizing Naples and making it a place that, anybody could want to live.
So I have a question because I was reading this really good book. I've been reading a ton of books lately. And it talked about people that were coming, like Christopher Columbus and all these people that came to America, right, and established America and built America. A lot of them would be considered, on some kind of spectrum of maybe entrepreneurs, bipolar a little bit, where they have that really, I can do anything I want, versus the people that are just like status quo, I'm good, yeah, it sucks. People that stay in Portland, yeah, it sucks, but whatever. It is what it is. Just deal with it. Do you feel like that's the people that are moving to Florida? Or like, is it the entrepreneur type, or how are they transferring their jobs? Because there can't be all that industry there in Naples to support these people.
So you think they're all just crazy nut jobs like me? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that's what I think. But what I'm saying is that's the reason America became so great so quickly was because of those people like the Carnegies, the JP Morgans. So are those the type of people that are going to go there, and then you're going to see this huge boom in Florida because you have those people that are the risk takers, the entrepreneurs, to build out those?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so to some extent. I do feel like there's a fair bit of people that, that moved here that have skills that are transferable to some sort of industry here, right? They're not all, super entrepreneurs like myself. They may work for a company, but they're an integral part of that company. Like my neighbor, right across the cul-de-sac here, like he's a good dude. He's my age. He was hired by a restaurateur who's opened a bunch of really successful restaurants to come down here and open another one of their restaurants. And now it's like killing it on Fifth Ave downtown. And so he's like a god in the restaurant space, but he's not an entrepreneur, but he's an entrepreneur, right? And so
he's an integrator. He's the part of the, the traction book. He's the integrator. You need an integrator.
Right. And so I think there's a lot of people like that. There's another guy that lives down my street. He is the head caddy at, like the most prestigious private club here. And he's from Ohio, and he came down and he's like the man that, basically flies on, super, super wealthy people that I could name drop on their private jets to California to play the crazy courses there. And then they come back here same day, right? That kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of just really high quality people that were equally sick of wherever it is that they were living, and they just wanted to change, right? Or maybe they weren't sick of it. But I think to uproot everything in your life and move, you have to be pretty sick of where you're living, right? Like nobody just says, oh, I like it, and they do this. Like you have to kind of get pushed to the point where you're like, man, where I'm at is kind of fucked. And so, we're really,
because it's not just your job, right? You're uprooting like your whole community that you've built for 40 years for you, right? Over the years, you got your parents, your wife's parents, you got your friends that punch you in the face, on the basketball court, you have your bowling league, you have your community that you do, you have church. So you're uprooting that and saying, okay, I'm going to take me, my kid, my wife, whatever, and I'm going to go try to build that again over, in 6 months. I mean, that's all. It's hard.
Oh, it's a huge undertaking. Don't get me wrong. And that's why it's almost easier. I mean, it's not almost easier. It is easier. And I've thought about this a lot. Like If you just got transferred for your job and you moved because of a job transfer, that's easy in comparison. I mean, you're leaving maybe your community and some friends and your routine, but all you got to do is think about, where am I going to live, and you move, right? That's it. This is like, that's just one piece of a much larger
Even then
equation.
you have an excuse to your family. It's not like, oh, I'm leaving because I don't want to be here. And they're like, well, you're leaving me. Well, sorry, my job, they have an excuse. My job's making me go. I have to.
I mean, and I'll
Even
be
though
honest,
I don't like you, Mom, or whatever.
yeah, that's a shitty conversation. I'll be honest. I mean, I still remember I went to lunch with my mom and I was like, we're leaving. And she was like, no. And, obviously she was sad for a good reason. And, maybe I can get her to come spend more time down here in Florida as time goes on. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you don't have a reason that you can blame it on, right? You are the reason. You're the reason you're leaving.
Yeah. The challenge I have had with this conversation with Chrissy is my mom doesn't have enough money she has enough money to live decently, but not enough money to buy airline tickets, stay at an Airbnb. I would have to pay for all those things. So, that's where I would struggle. Like, pretty much everybody wouldn't be able to afford it, so they'll never come. So if I want them to come, I almost feel obligated to have to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, part of this adventure is, I bought a house. It's a golf cart ride from this house so that people could come down and just stay, right? Now, I'm not going to pay for their airfare as well most of the time, but they at least have a place they can stay when they come here. So, I mean, I think if you're going to make this type of, decision, you have to kind of build in some ways for people to come easily visit you, right? And stay. And the fact of the matter is I kept a house in Lake Oswego, obviously in Oregon, so that I could go back and forth, and so that I could take the kids back there and they could see my parents. Because I didn't want to, taking my kids away from my parents, their grandkids, that weighed fairly heavily on me. I didn't want to remove them from their life completely. And, but, we're making the best of it, and, they're going to come down and visit, and it's just, it's a restart, right? It's a complete restart. You're building from scratch, and whether it be friends, whether it be community, whether it be business, how you interact with your family when they see you, it's just a complete restart.
So let's jump into the cool part about this. I talk a lot about, just the same as you did, building a business that can be moved to any market. Cole and I did a show 18 months ago, and it happened to be in Florida. And it was basically, if I was to get dropped into a new market, Cole and I, what would we do? And it happened to be one market in Florida with limited resources. Now, you probably don't have the limited resources, but I don't think you've put much resources other than some time and some few dollars behind it. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because I think what you just did, it's now April, beginning of April. Talk about how many things you have under contract, what you did to prepare moving into it. And let's talk about that, because you just practiced exactly what you preached. People can say, oh, you've been in Lake Oswego forever. Everybody knows you. You built this brand. Sure. Well, now they can't say that. Now you put all these things you've been telling everybody for 10 years on the mic, right, to test, and you prove to yourself, yeah, I was right.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what happened. And, we were talking about this the other day. It's like, there's a lot of new people kind of coming up and new strategies and new ways to do this business. And I'm kind of an old guy, sort of. I mean, I don't feel old, but in terms of like the influencer space and new people coming up and new ways to do this business and new ways to find deals and blah, 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 blah. Even with all that, there's still tried and true ways that have worked forever, and they'll still work, and they are still working. And so, I did have a great brand that I built in Lake Oswego. And because of that brand awareness and, a lot of marketing, the body of work of marketing that we did was, a decade plus long. Right. And so with that just comes natural lead flow and opportunities that present themselves here. I'm starting from zero, right? There is none of that. There's no brand awareness. I'm just another guy. Nobody has any idea who the hell I am here. Right. And so my job in these first, it's been 3 full months now being here, has been, okay, how can I get people to know me the same way as people in Lake Oswego knew me as quickly as possible? And, you're right. I haven't spent a ton of money, maybe.
Let's ballpark it just so,
sub $5,000 on marketing in this, space here. And
let's say hours too. Let's talk about hours and how much, once you've made a decision to move to Naples.
Yeah, hours. I mean, I spent a fair bit of time, but if you're younger, you don't have the money, like you always have time, right? So you can use the time. The time that I spent and the way that I spent it, because I think this is important, is, I came here a couple of times before I bought a house here and ultimately before I moved here. And part of it was, okay, where do I want to live? But part of it is, okay, if I'm going to move the business here, where should I be investing, right? And so I underwrote basically the entire city of Naples and the surrounding area and said, which pockets do I want to be in? And I identified 3 that I wanted to start out in. And one of them was in downtown Naples. One of them was Bonita Shores, which is just north of North Naples. And one of them was Naples Park. All 3 of them I felt like had quite a bit of runway ahead of them. They were on the verge of exploding. To this point, here we are, that was probably like, let's call it about a year ago. Naples Park has exploded since then. Values of it's crazy to see what's happened. Part of it has been the general appreciation cycle that we're on, but part of it is that neighborhood was just on the knuckle, and it finally, enough dominoes fell that it pushed prices through the roof really quickly.
And if you're a listener of the show, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. You did this is exactly what you did in Lake Oswego. I remember listening to you, it was first edition, right? You had first edition, you found these different areas and pockets, these builders once the builders followed you, you'd find the next pocket to fall, and you were always the first guy there, and it was all these bigger builders that they would be falling right behind you, and they'd be paying 20% more for their lots than what you were paying for them.
Pretty much the same thing. It was the same thing. I just had to do it in a quicker manner and try and make sure that, I didn't have any history here, right? So I was trying to get the lay of the land as quickly as I could and get a feel for things and just make sure that my underwrite was correct. And it was, in hindsight. Downtown Naples has exploded. It was kind of a strip in the downtown section that prices were significantly cheaper. We're talking, you're on one side of the highway, you're like 4 to 15 million. The other side of the highway, you can buy stuff for like 300 to 400,000, right?
We drove around. It's
pretty obvious to somebody like me, but for people that had been here for a long time, they didn't see it. They saw that highway as like a huge, barrier between values that can never be crossed, like this giant alligator infested moat that you can never build a freaking bridge over, right? Well, they built a lot of bridges over them. Yeah, so that area obviously has taken off. Naples Park is a really cool area. That one was pretty easy to pick out. People have been speculating about, they call it the park for, I don't know, since before the last crash. The challenge was with that neighborhood was that there's so much shit mixed in with it that, a certain amount of that shit has to get cleaned out before the neighborhood gets to its tipping point, right? And in the last run up, 04, 5, 6 before the crash, people were speculating heavily in that neighborhood, but there wasn't enough shit that got cleaned out to justify the high prices. Well, now on this last run up, a lot more of that has been cleaned out. And so now, as a neighborhood, the look has changed enough that it can justify higher prices. And I knew it was real close. And that's officially happened in the last year. Prices have gone, just so everybody can kind of quantify it. New construction pricing a year ago was like 900,000. That same new construction now is like 2 to 2.4 million. So,
jeez Louise. But how do you do that? The question I always have, because I look at this stuff all the time, like at Tri-Cities or these different areas, and I actually looked at that market a year ago when you were going over it. It's like, okay, I can see like maybe it's going to go, but somebody's got to be the first one to pull the trigger, right? When you went to first edition, somebody's got to be the first one to go stand in front of the bus to make sure it works.
Yeah. And well, a lot of this is just guys started setting a new price and a new price and a new price and just kept proofing, right? But I looked at it and I recognized 2 things. And I talked to a builder who'd been building here for 20 years. And, he told me one thing that absolutely confirmed my thoughts on that neighborhood, but he also was missing something completely that has now, I have been proven right in our conversation that I had with him. The first thing he said is that a fund had contacted him and he was going to be building like 40 to 50 houses in that neighborhood over the next 3 years, hope or less, depending on how fast they can acquire dirt. Well, that told me, okay, he's got all the financial bandwidth he could ever need to buy as much stuff in that neighborhood as possible. And he's just one guy. There's probably a bunch of other guys trying to do the same thing, or at least some version of that. So this neighborhood is going to continue to change quickly. And the other thing that we talked about is that he was like, I only buy them in these pockets of this neighborhood. And it's like first edition times 5, right? It's like 10 streets, it's like 17 streets tall, and it's like maybe 6 blocks wide. And so he said that he was only buying houses in certain pockets of that whole thing. And I said, it's only a matter of time before it becomes homogenous. Prices will become homogenous. It won't matter where you are in the park. You can price things about the same, because that's exactly what happened in first edition in Lake Oswego. At the beginning of the redevelopment cycle, stuff that was closer to like the library in downtown got more. If you were in the back corner, you got less, because it felt shittier, right? Well, now here we are, April 2022. You can price stuff virtually the same no matter where you're on the park. So I was right about that. so that was a neighborhood that, has proved since then in terms of like making money off of that, so that, people listening can say, okay, that's great, but how did you get dropped in the middle of nowhere and make money in 3 months? Well, what I did is I started marketing to vacant lot owners in that neighborhood, along with some people that own property, actual houses. But I marketed very heavily to the vacant lots in that neighborhood. And I looked them up. There was 120 vacant lots at that point in time. Now it's whittled down to 68 that haven't sold or that are actually can be bought. And
quick question, real quick.
Yeah.
How many houses do you think are in that area?
Oh, I pulled the like list source number on it. I don't know. I think it's like maybe like 3,000 to 4,000 or something, but I could be wrong.
And so here's the point, guys, that I want to make. Just like on the show we were talking last week about being very intentional, you don't need a huge list. And so that's the point I want to make sure I'm pushing home here.
Yeah, you don't at all. I mean, this is like, I don't know what you call it the other day, the honey hole, right? This is one of
I call it my Norman leads.
Yeah. So my Norman leads were the 120 vacant lots that were in this. Now, of course, fixer shitty houses are, have its own list too, but generally vacant lots get marketed to less than fixer shitty houses. So that's why I went there first. And so I started marketing to that list in like November, and I got a guy that responded in December. I had kind of an ongoing, just a nicety conversation. He was like, well, what do you think my lot's worth? And I was like, well, it's probably worth X at that point in time. No response from him, but I wanted to try and engage him, and that's as far as I could get. Then I get here, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to reach back out to that guy and just see if I can continue the conversation, because he at least reached out to me. And I pinged him, and he's like, we were thinking about putting those on the market next week. Good timing. And I was like, what were you going to put them on the market for? And he was like, 600,000. I was like, well, you want to trim out some real estate commissions? I'll buy them. And he was like, okay. So we came to a deal, and I ended up buying the lots for 580,000 a pop. And, that at that point in time, lot price, he thought he got a pretty good deal, which he did. I bought forward a little bit on value, but I knew that the values would keep climbing significantly. And so now there's one lot that's like 3 over from mine that's on the market for $1,045,000 that they just put on. And I underwrote those lots.
Is it pending? Will it sell for that?
I don't know. Maybe it might sell for $1 million. I don't know. We're going to see. But here's what I don't care, honestly. But what does matter and what is real is that I underwrote that as having a finished product house, 2,000 square foot, 4-bedroom, 3-bath house, being worth about $1.5 million. Now that house is worth 2.2 minimum, 2.4 maximum. So there's an additional, $700,000 to $900,000 of equity that I'm going to make on this deal. And I said yes at 1.5, which means
that's two lots.
That's two lots, right? And so at 1.5, it cost me about $400,000 to $500,000 to build these houses. There was, probably $400,000 to $500,000 in profit in each one. Now there's another 7 to 9 on top of that. So there you go, right? In 3 months, that's could be as much as $3 million.
So I want to just interject here a couple of things. The last week's show, or I don't know when we're releasing this, but I talked about mortgages and stuff like that, and understanding your market. And this is a time to be careful, but there's different markets to be careful in, different markets to push in. When Greg and I were buying the multifamily deals, each one, the first one last year, the 25 unit, we're like, dude, we were paying too much. Turns out we bought it with a ton of equity. We're geniuses now. The one in November, we pressed it. I wanted to pay 2.9. We paid 3.5. I'm like, oh my gosh, we're pressing it. We're freaking geniuses right now. The other one we just closed, we pressed it a little bit. We're geniuses right now. And it's just like, but we knew the risk was worth it because there's no inventory. There's no rentals. Hedge fund, or these guys were coming from Seattle. Money was coming in. Prices, cap rates were decreasing, compressing. So yes, is it risky? Like you said, yes. But if you study and understand things, you can take more calculated risk is what I'm hearing you say. Is that correct?
Yeah. And the other thing was when I bought these, you couldn't buy lots. There were none for sale in the entire park, right? And so I looked at that and I was like, well, the last lots that sold for like $550 a piece, but there's none for sale. And the new construction pricing keeps getting jacked up and jacked up and jacked up. I was like, well, the lot values are trailing the house values. Eventually they're gonna bump back up. So whatever, I'll pay this guy what he wants. We'll all win, right? He'll make some money on me, and then I'll hold him longer term. But the reality is that I'm not gonna sell these houses. I'm gonna keep them. I'm gonna build them, and they're gonna be, some premier short-term rentals for us that'll probably pull somewhere between 25 and 30 grand a month. So at that point, it's
where's the risk though?
I don't care what they're worth.
Where's the risk, I guess, in that? Let's take the short-term rental. Say you're going to build it, or say you're doing that same thought process with a rehab. Because the one thing where people get caught, in 2018, like in Seattle, is they're baking in like, this should appreciate. this should be worth more, right? That's the risk. How do people that are maybe newer and don't have that gut feeling that you have, or have the bank account to take bigger risks, how do you protect your downside on that? And like, what would be your advice in that kind of line of thinking?
I mean, let's say I was fully leveraged having to buy and build these out. The hedging on the downside risk is that I bought property in an exact location that the entire world wants to own property. That's it. Because the reality is that I've been getting calls from people that not only are all over the United States, but all Canada, Europe,
to buy your lots.
Yeah. And to pick my brain about how they can find lots in there. So this area is Lake Oswego, I was competing against 3 or 4 other bigger builders, right? That, we were all friends, but at the end of the day, we're competing against each other, or at least sort of friends, some of them more so than others, but we were competing against each other. Here, I'm competing against all the other builders, and I'm competing against the rest of the world as well. And, there's a lot of money in the rest of the world, right? That, they don't care about the challenges of building yet. They don't care about any of that stuff. All they care about is it's a giant land grab for them, right? So, that's my hedge on this particular market. That's why it's different. It's different.
Well, you made a comment earlier about moving to Florida being the beacon of freedom, right? And it's kind of a half-hearted joke, but it really, at the end of the day, it's not. Politics aside, you said guys from Canada are calling you. They've having some issues with some freedom stuff, right? Where people are having issues in certain states, and so it really is kind of a beacon of freedom. And so people have money, want to be in a place where they can do what the hell they want to do.
Yeah. And, to be honest, it's like paradise here most of the year, right? So, you layer that on top, and it's just, I can see why Southwest Florida has become such a popular destination on many levels, right? To live and to vacation and whatever. But it's just, that to me covers any downside risk that there would be, regardless of my financial standing.
So you spent $5,000, you got 2 lots. How long did you close it? How long did it take for you under contract to close?
Let's see. I put them under contract. I think I was here just less than 2 weeks. So I got here on the 3rd of January after, a cross country pilgrimage. And then I think on the 14th of January, I put those lots under contract. I closed them a month later. So I own those. And then right now I've actually got 2 additional houses that I'll be closing this next week that'll have been under contract for about 30 days each.
So where I'm going with this though, so you had them under contract for a month or until you close on them. Say that builder that you said that had the hedge fund money or whatever, say you got them under contract 2 weeks later, you're like, I just want to spin these. What could you spun them for?
At this point, at least,
let's say 2 weeks into the deal. 2 weeks into the deal.
2 weeks, at least $100,000 more each 2 weeks into it. Now, at least $200,000 more per deal, maybe 3.
So, new market, don't know shit, don't know really anybody. You studied, you prepared, sent out some marketing. What do you send? I think you were only sending 70 or 80 letters a week or something like that. Nothing crazy.
Yeah, nothing crazy. And to be honest, I've stopped mailing at this moment in time until we get caught up with just kind of figuring out our construction schedule and how much work we want to do and whatnot. But yeah, you don't have to do crazy amounts of marketing. You just have to do good marketing to exact properties.
Yeah. In certain markets. Now, if you're Midwest, then you could use somebody like Call Magic or do more because you got to burn through more because you're not hitting 100K fees, right? But
if you're in a lower price point market, you have to do higher volume, right? If you're in a higher price point market, you can do lower volume. It's just kind of the way the pendulum swings.
Yeah. So 2 weeks, you send out stuff in November, 2 weeks in to be in there, sign them up. 2 weeks later, you could have made $200,000. That's a pretty good salary for anybody. Take the rest of the year off in paradise if you really wanted to.
Yeah, if you want to.
So yeah, that's what, it's not that hard, guys. Go to that last episode. I talk about the Normans and being very specific, breaks it down. And also you got a ton of episodes on this early in this podcast that breaks this all down as well.
Yeah. I will say one thing though, because this is important, getting people to call you or contact you that's only, I guess as G.I. Joe back in the day, for those old enough to remember, that's only half the battle, right? The other half is you have to actually talk to people, right? And when you talk to people, you have to get them to like you and trust you and want to do business with you. And so that's the piece of this game that I think, is often overlooked, right? Everybody wants to quantify how much, ROI or what the response rate is or whatever. It's those things are important, but what's I think exponentially more important is how much do people want to do business that actually talk to you? And that's an unquantifiable number. And oftentimes people's percentage on that is probably pretty low, and they need to look in the mirror and improve that if they want to do better in this business.
Hate to admit it, we've never tracked KPIs ever. I don't know if you have. I mean, we've kind of tracked some of them a little bit, but vaguely. But I just know, like, if I have somebody that wants to sell, I'm going to win 90% of the time. I beat people all the time. Case in point, this deal we closed for 3-2 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks before we were under contract, somebody came and offered them 3.7 all cash, close in 2 weeks, $200,000 non-refundable at sign it. And they said, nah, we're good with Elliot. Because the guy liked me and trust me, right? Same with this guy. If when you're talking to him, somebody came offer.
Totally. And I have a voicemail. I mean, I'll let you know where I'm going to use it. But he called me and thanked me for doing business with him afterwards, right? Which he should. He made some money on me, but he didn't have to call me and leave me a nice voicemail and thank me. I had another guy in the park that I told you about the other day. He left me a voicemail. I went to see him. I haven't bought his property yet, but I will. He's 92 years old. Calls me every couple of weeks just to check in and tell me that he's not ready to sell yet. But he called me last week and he said, hey, I just want you to know that, I put a fake real estate sign out so people would quit bothering me. But I didn't want you to think that, I signed with somebody else other than you or whatever. And I said, you know what, Bob, that's a great idea. Good for you. Let me know when you're ready. Right. So,
it's so important.
It's super important.
That's the Normans, right? That's why I said that's the whole thing I talk about my Normans. Coined this. Greg and I were in the office writing down our list, going through, hours and hours and hours breaking down our list. And we're like, these are Normans, right? I don't came up with it, but it's like these guys that are 60 to 80, 60 to 90. They just want somebody to talk to for the most part. They want somebody that also appreciates what they have. Like with rentals or these things, my opinion is they probably did all the work themselves over the years, right? And the kids are like, I don't want a freaking rental. They just want somebody to talk to. They want... Yeah, so
they just want a normal person that can have a conversation with them that they actually like, and that means something to a lot of people that, some people it's all about money, but other people it's money and that, right? If you can be fair on price, but they get that part of it as well, like it's no brainer.
And that's why you guys put out the negotiating with sellers thing. Right when I started with you, 15, that was so instrumental to, I was already a people person, but to have the conversation and understand how to weave it, that was the best thing, the best $1,000 I think I ever spent in this real estate business.
It's such a valuable skill, and it's a skill that is often outsourced way too soon. And, that's the skill going back to transferring, to a different market, right? And being dropped somewhere in the country, like, okay, A, you got to be able to get your phone to ring, but B, can you be that guy that gets people to want to do business with them? And if you can, then you can get dropped anywhere and you can, generate results kind of like what we talked about.
Yep. Awesome. All right. So what's the next plan? You said you're putting the brakes on it a little bit because you said the construction license was terrible. You got issues with trusses. What's the next plan?
Yeah, so we're working through the construction license I have. It took a long time to get it. It definitely is they set a high bar here for, they don't want to have crazy Florida man run around with a license doing crazy stuff. So they make it more difficult to get your license here. But then once you get it, it's pretty smooth sailing. So I now have my construction license here, which is great. There is some challenges with getting some of the building supplies. So we're working through that right now. And hopefully I'll have a pretty good solution for it by next week. It's been interesting. It's just different, right? It's just different. Again, I'm laying the tracks. But we've got 2 builds, and then we've got 2 renovation projects, houses that we're going to keep, and we're going to operate as short-term rentals as well. So I think at this point, everything we bought, we're going to keep, and we're going to operate them all as short-term rentals. My goal is to try and build out a portfolio of about 10 of those, in addition to doing some kind of higher end spec stuff. But if we can get 10 of those short-term rentals, and the cash flow is crazy. It's like, we can do really, really well. And then, all the other stuff is just, big cash chunk paydays. But, when you can generate 6 figures plus a month of cash flow from short-term rentals, it's a pretty damn good life.
Yeah, that's weird though, because I've been talking to you about rentals for a few years. You just never really wanted to pull the trigger.
Couldn't do them in Portland like this. Couldn't do them. To be honest, it's not appealing. Let me rephrase it. It's not nearly as appealing to do it in a place where the cash flow numbers are significantly less. I'd rather take cash chunk, right? But when you can start generating, $20,000 to $30,000 a month out of a single house, now all of a sudden it's a lot more appealing, right?
Yeah. When you post those numbers, what you think you could get for those, that's crazy. But this short-term rental game is crazy. We just put one in our 32 unit that we bought in November. One of the one bedrooms. We're right by a hospital, walking distance to a bunch of cool stuff. And we're kicking it around like, let's create a short-term, like a Airbnb. You know, maybe we get some nurses or whatever. Launched it like last Wednesday. As of today, we basically are fully booked for April.
Yeah,
it's not $25,000 a month. It's
but it's
sub $100.
But it's proof of concept, right? At a higher rate than what you're getting otherwise. Like, so it's, I think, part of this adventure and this journey is like, you have to be willing to change a little bit too, right? Like, and you kind of change to adapt to the opportunities that present themselves. And so, I have done things a certain way for a long time, but that doesn't mean that I won't change slightly and I won't do things a little bit different way, if the opportunities present themselves. And that's kind of what I feel like is happening right now. Like, I'm like, well, it'd be really dumb not to take advantage of this at the same time, using the same skill sets that I use for the other stuff anyway, right?
Awesome. So you mentioned journey. I think it's a pretty cool journey. I love being your friend, after all these years and being able to talk to you and listen to these and have phone calls and conversations. But I think there's a ton of good stuff that you're learning and doing. And why don't you talk a little bit about what you're doing to continue sharing that with people for your, you have this great passion to be a mentor. You've been a mentor to me for years in a lot of ways. You've always been willing to jump on when I needed help with Chrissy and I. So you enjoy that, not for the money side of it, just because you like doing it. So what is the new project that Tucker's got in the works? Because you don't have enough things going on. So
we've been working on this thing behind the scenes for probably since last summer, end of last summer, something like that. Because I knew that I was going to be moving. And, at that point, you usually only uproot your life one time, right? And move like this. If you did it multiple times, you might be crazy. But, to do this move and to kind of have all these experiences, I decided I wanted to document it and I wanted to kind of create content with it and I wanted to kind of tell a story with it. And so fortunately, Dan obviously very well. He's worked for me for a long time and he enables me to do things like the Real Dealz back in the day. And, when we simply produced it in-house and put it out along with Portland Real Estate Podcast and other things. And so we decided to take on this new podcast adventure together, but we needed some help. We needed somebody that could take my skills, which were good, and make them great, right? And so, I was humble enough to know that, I could still use some direction and some help to kind of refine my skill set. And so we brought on somebody else that will remain nameless for this time. It'll come out eventually. I don't know when he wants to let it be known, but, he took a raw idea and he refined it and he gave us some direction in terms of the type of show that we should create, how we create the content, how we do the production. And so at first I was like, man, I don't know. I don't know. That's a lot of work. And I'm not sure that I'm on board with that. And with time, when I listened to a couple other shows, he suggested that had done the same thing. Long story short, eventually I got on board and I was like, you know what? You're a genius. It's going to take a lot of work.
He is a genius. The guy is a genius. I mean, he's helped me and he's done some big stuff. I mean, he's
worked with the biggest names in this business. And he's the guy behind the scenes that everybody says he's a god, right? You see the guys on the front side of the microphone. He's the guy behind it. And so, we've been working on this project together and it's called The Journey. And we're about maybe 2 weeks away from launch, 2 to 3 weeks. And we have a number of episodes recorded, produced already, ready to go. We're trying to get far enough ahead with the content that, it's not a push for us on the back end to create episodes to get them out because it's very production heavy, but the end product is amazing. And so we're really excited to share it with the world. And it's basically, it's storytelling. It's like, how back in the day we had a lot of production companies come to us and say, we want to do a reality show with you, but we don't want to do a reality show the way you want to do it. We want to do the reality show the way we and the networks want to do it because we have to give them what they want for them to buy the show. And I was always like, that's a stupid fucking idea. You should do the show this way, but it always fell on deaf ears. Nobody wanted to hear my idea of how a show should be done to make it a hit. Well, this is like an audio reality show done the way I want to do it, but done with kind of the oversight of somebody that's much smarter than myself in terms of production.
Are you not adding any video in this?
What's that?
Are you gonna do YouTube or no YouTube? No, nothing.
We may, but we're going to start out with audio because I feel like it's that's the direction we wanted to take this. So it may.
I mean, you do have a face for radio, so it's perfect.
Yeah, especially today. So who knows? This may go a few different directions after we put it out, but we're really excited about it, and we spent a lot of time and energy on it. And we've been kind of on the sly, letting people listen to it, and to this point, they've thought it's been really good. You're next in line. Like his wife, the guy who's helping us produce it, that's on the side.
Okay,
we haven't let it out of the inner circle yet, but we wanted to get some like sort of non-biased opinions. So,
dude, I have so much to like. Some of my stuff I'm going on with life, but I literally looked at my YouTube the other day, and I listened to 6 books in March. And I still had about 70 hours of YouTube on there. Now it's all learning. I'm watching learning, so I'm not just watching mindless stuff. But yeah, so please send me some content. I love it. But
I'll send it to you this week so that you can give it a listen as well. But anyway, the podcast is going to be called The Journey, and we're really excited to release it here in the next few weeks. We have a trailer episode that will be out here shortly. So it basically just gives you a little couple minute snippet of kind of the production style and just what the show is. But it documents, me from basically closing up my entire business in Lake Oswego, the transition here to Naples, and rebuilding everything from scratch here in Naples. And it kind of gives you behind the scenes. I take real life conversations. I've actually been recording all my real life conversations that I have, and then taking snippets of those, and we overlay them into the show. So it truly is a fully scripted reality show, but it's real, and it's my life, and we're taking kind of the parts of it that you guys would be interested in, and we're kind of putting a magnifying glass on it. And I think it's going to be really cool.
So 2 questions with that. One's more of a statement question. The name of this show is The Real Dealz. And the one thing I've always appreciated about you is there's a few things you hold back, very, very few, right? And, you let your inner circle and the DFA know those things, but you've always been very open. You talked about numbers to people. Even on this show, you talked about Naples Park. You didn't say, I'm in this new area, and that you weren't trying to hold anything back. Like, why do you do that? Like, why have you always felt just the abundance mindset and in that thought process? What is your why behind that?
Because I don't think it matters, right? Like, I think you can tell people basically everything you do, and it doesn't matter. And I think that it will inspire the right people, and other people will just hear it and think it's cool, and they won't do anything with it anyway, right? So,
but still, why do it then? I mean, if it, why?
Like, why
be so real? Why put the content? Why spend all this time?
Oh, well, with the content, like,
you don't need the money is what I'm saying. You've made plenty of money in the real world.
So like with the content side of things, like initially, and I had this conversation with one of our other DFA members actually this past week, and they were like, why do you do content, right? And I was like, it's a fair question, right? And initially, to be totally honest, it was about creating something that could create money, right? But then I realized shortly thereafter that I've made so much more in like friendships and connections and opportunities than the money is meaningless in comparison, right? And so that was initially it was money, then it was about that. Now it is a combination of that, and I realized that I'm good at creating content, and with the help of these other people, I think we can become really great at it. And so it's just one of those things where like I'm challenging myself to go from good to great, right? And so this new show is my version of that. Can I take the next step and take good content and make it amazing, like to the point that like people in the podcast world go, wow, that's really fucking good, right? Not just people in the real estate world are like, he's good talking about real estate, right? So I think it's a challenge in a lot of ways, and I like to challenge myself. That's why I moved across the country. That's why I'm an entrepreneur. That's why I do all these things. Otherwise, I get bored, and idle time is never good for the entrepreneurial type. So
yeah, well, you definitely put yourself in a challenge partner with Cole and I in the call center. we know you like challenges.
I think it's worked out to this point. We all still like each other, right?
And amazing, by the way, this isn't a plug for Call Magic, but 4 months, we're on month 4 of losing 0 clients. Like we feel like that's been a challenge, that show.
I mean, that's fucking amazing, right? Yeah, in a lead generation business to lose 0 clients in 4 months, like that's,
and gaining every month more.
That's phenomenal. Like it's a huge achievement.
Which Cole and I both fill our roles, but the reason we brought you on that as the CEO wasn't for you to put a ton of hours in. It was to keep everything together from the wheels not falling off. And it's like that is your superpower as well, is keeping the wheels on the bus in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So second question on that, this is different than what you've done in the Real Deals before, where you opened up the doors and the windows to your business. You're now opening up your life. You're recording conversations. You're talking about probably some personal things, I'm guessing, a little bit more. You're going to probably be more vulnerable. I know sometimes I can do it easier, but I know sometimes you're not a feelings kind of guy, or, challenges or share hardships. That's just not who you are as a person. You're that tough guy with a heart of gold, right? How have you grappled with that? And what do you have fears that like you're going to do this and you're going to open people up to your life and it's going to flop?
I mean, maybe a little bit, but I've been pushed a lot to continue to be more and more vulnerable with this type of content, right? So like, my natural lane is to be less vulnerable, right? But this is, again, a type of content that pushes me a little bit more outside of my, comfort zone on many levels. And, at the end of the day, I'm comfortable with it now. And, I've given it enough listens. I've had, we've had countless, we call them reads, where we give it a listen and we dissect every line, right? To the point of like, that's how much time and energy is spent on this show. I feel like there's no way that people won't like it, at least in our space, right? I know the real estate space will love it. The challenge, the real challenge is, how do you make it like a flipping show where like people who like real estate will watch it and love it, but people who aren't in real estate will listen and love it, right? And so that's the real challenge. And if we can do that part, then I'll feel like we really succeeded.
Yeah, because if you succeed in the real estate space, the top of the ladder was probably Bigger Pockets with Brandon Turner, right? At their heyday. 250,000 downloads a month per episode. Whatever episode they got a month, for the initial episode. Well, Joe Rogan gets 11 million downloads per episode, right? So there's a lot of gap in there, right? So if you can find a way to bring 150 real estate thousand, and there's a lot of openings there, like you said with HGTV, because there's so many people that watch that stupid, all the time. You tell people you flip houses, oh, I watched HGTV, this and that. Oh, it must be easy. Have you ever flipped a house? No, but okay.
Would you even think about flipping a house? No, but I like watching the show, right? Yeah. And so that's what this show is meant to do, right? It's meant to bridge the two worlds. Like, how can we be listened to by a real estate pro, and they're like, damn, that's a good show, and listened to by a complete novice that would never buy a house to flip and be like, damn, that's a good show, right? How do you do that? And that's been kind of the challenge, but at the same time, I think we've been up for it, and I think it'll be a hit with both sets of people. And if it is, then it'll be a huge success for us.
How do you do a show like this? You look at these guys like Tarek, on the flip and flop stuff, and I follow them, and their egos are huge, right? And Brandon, I think, is probably the most humble guy in the world, but he still has a brand that he's done really well and built, and he's got to have a little bit of, I'm great kind of stuff. How do you do this? Because we all have an ego, and not insert your ego into things and be vulnerable, and like, how do you do that and not be like, oh, look how great I'm doing. I just got these 2 lots. They're worth for 580. Now they're worth $1.1 million. Look how great I am.
I don't know. I think part of it is like time in the game, right? Like, here's me being vulnerable, right? Like, when we started Real Deals, it blew up after about a year, right? And so in this content game, there's like, who's hot at the moment, right? And you ride these waves of who gets hot and how long you can kind of stay on top, right? And shows and people, you can only stay on top for so long before you start to wane, right? And so like, I understand that cycle, right? And like, I understand where I am in terms of social clout within our space right now, right? Like, I'm the guy that was around before, and I'm kind of the old guy that's kind of dissipated into the background again. But then this shoots us up to the top and beyond that again, right? But I know it's going there, but I'm okay being this guy that's not really, at the forefront of things right now. So I don't really have an ego to it, because I recognize what this is, right? Like, I've been on this ride before. Like, I've been to the top and down to the bottom. We were, the top ranked show in the real estate category a number of times over the years, right? It just
until I took it over.
Until you took it out. And now it's growing again, which is great. But I think it's just time in the seat. Like, I've been to the top of the wave and I've been down the backside again. Now we're going back up, right? So it's just, you kind of, what do they say? Like, act like you've been there before, right? Like, and I feel like we've been there before, and we're just trying to hit a bigger wave this time. And now it's the challenge of hitting the bigger wave and not so much the, beating my chest and look at my ego. Right.
Yeah. In case in point, when you gave me the Real Dealz, it was kind of out of left field that you did it. You knew what, I think the very first time I met you, I wanted to start a podcast with Stuart Fox, right? And you're like, no, just figure out real estate first. And that stuck with me, right? Learn something before you start telling other people how to do it. But you'd spent 7 years doing this show, and you could say all you want, like you're burned out, but you still had some attachment to it. But then also, full transparency, the numbers went down, and they went down for a while, right? You had, 10, 15K listeners. They went down. I think our low point, they hit 5K a month. Now they're coming back up, but you kept telling me, Elliot, don't look at the numbers. Don't look at the numbers. It's okay. It's okay. And it made me like, because those things, I don't want to let you down, right? But you did such a good job, and so I can really speak to that. Like, how were you able to do that? I mean, could you have done that in your 20s? I mean, could you let that happen as much in your 20s down then?
I don't know. To be totally honest, I looked at the Real Dealz numbers like once every 4 months when we were at the peak of, its success. Because what I did look at though, which I thought was a much better metric, is I read all of our 5-star reviews. And there was like a shit ton of them. Before iTunes wiped us off of the map because they didn't like the way we described the show, by the way, we had like hundreds and hundreds of 5-star reviews that were like, we didn't pay for them. They were like legitimate people saying really nice things. And I was like, fuck, we must be doing something right. Like, I'm not even pushing people to do these reviews that hard. And like, they're going in there, pouring their heart out saying what an awesome show it is and how great I'm doing. So I just go read those. And I was like, well, we're doing something right. What downloads, whatever. Numbers don't matter. Like, people are listening and they're getting a lot of value out of it. And that's what matters the most.
Yeah. And you were able to build a fantastic community that you've maintained at a good level of people. It's had people come in and come out, but like,
yeah, and that's the education game too, right? And that's the community game. It's a wave too, right? It's got ups and downs and waves and incoming, outgoing. Like that's, again, I've been on this ride before. Like I know how all this stuff works, and so it's just once you know how it works, you can hopefully take advantage of the next one that comes in, right? And so like I think this is our next one, and we're preparing for it the best we can to really take advantage of it.
Awesome. So. Yeah, dude. I that's the things I respect about you the most is just you just have there's a lot of people that we talked about this week. You can go build a big, huge flipping business and all, doing hundreds and hundreds of deals. There's nothing wrong with that. But you can do what you do and just be very special and go after Normans and very pockets and build a great life for yourself and just and build a good group that's not trying to be huge, but good relationships. I mean, Greg Lynch, my business partner with the multifamily. Now we're partners. I've done deals with these guys. So you build a very good circle of people around you. And I think this is a time the world needs this in a lot of ways. I think that there's nothing out there to listen to.
No, and that's the other thing is the podcast space has been suffering, right? And a lot of that has to do with rip off and duplicate, right? A lot of copycat type shows. And, in that world, what stands out is the host, right? The structure is the same. And so you have to be very charismatic and engaging as a host. And let's just be honest, most people are not, right? It's a skill that you can refine and get better at, which people should, but oftentimes people don't work at that and they don't get better at getting engaging and just being better on the microphone. And so
I don't want to take the negativity, right? Like even my stepmom, she had a friend listen to my show, I guess, and said, oh, I liked it, but Elliot talks too fast and I couldn't keep up with him. And then you get this, people always want to be negative. And so it's like, it's hard to take that instead of looking at it as constructive. Okay, let's talk slower. So now every time I'm on the mic, let's talk a little bit slower. But it's hard.
Yeah, it's not an easy skill either. I shouldn't, I don't want to rag on people because anybody that's doing it is doing a lot more than most people, right? Just by putting themselves out there and doing it. But, doing it is not enough these days, I guess is my point. Like you have to, it's a skill that you have to refine and try and be great at, just like anything else. Just because you have a microphone and you talk on it doesn't mean people should listen. Like radio's known that for years, right? Like that's why there's certain guys on radio that, get syndicated everywhere and get paid gazillions of dollars. And there's other ones that nobody listens to their show, right? And so I just think podcasting is growing up as a business now. And we've known that it would, or as an industry. And there's obviously, like the really popular people that, have exploded, but you just have to refine your skill sets and refine your show and really what it is you're trying to accomplish if you want to do it. And if you do that, you'll get what you want out of it.
Yeah, but I've learned, it's hard to put a show out every week. One, it's hard to find a guest. And then if you don't find guests, it's really hard to figure out what to talk about, and just then not only figure those things out, but then be motivated to want to do the show every week, because you got so many things going on in life. You got kids, you got diapers.
It's tough. And one thing, as we kind of, finish up here is that putting out monologue content that people listen to, that's a tough skill. And that's why most guys, they'll never do a monologue show. Or if they do, you listen, you're like, God damn, that sucks. Because they just, you put the microphone in front of them and they have to talk for 20 minutes themselves. Like, that's a very challenging skill for most people to do. So, I mean, I know you've done a lot of monologue shows and you've had great retention, so I applaud you for that. But that's probably one of the more difficult skill sets in podcasting.
Totally. I mean, I'll go on some weeks where I'm like 10, 15 minutes in on a monologue and I'm like, what the frick do I keep talking about? Like, I don't know. So now the one I just did today, I was doing 4 or 5 hours of research to bring up articles to have things to talk about. And I, structured it out how I'm going to talk. But it's still, I got probably 45 minutes on there, but it's still hard unless you get on something you're passionate about, which you need motivation to be passionate about that. And so it is a very hard thing to do, which I'm still refining and trying to get better. But yeah, it's not easy. So you did it for years though, and you did it so freaking well. Like, you didn't do the interview game. You actually went into the harder part and just did more monologues than anything else.
And that's why Real Dealz was successful, honestly, at the beginning, is because I said, okay, everybody's doing interviews, right? That had podcasts at that point. It's like, I'll just do the monologues. And if I do the monologues, then guess what? I connect with the listener, right? I connect with the listener. And then we get all those 5-star reviews and we can build a community and we can get to know other amazing people. And, that's where kind of the magic came in. And then, of course, you can only do so many monologues before you have to spice up the show and you got to bring other people in. So that's why we eventually did, a number of interviews as well. But yeah, I went straight to the hard part. And, I still remember looking at the microphone the first time I tried to record and I went like 7 seconds and I was like, what else am I going to say? Right. So, I wasn't like great out of the box either, but yeah, it's a tough skill, and that's, but it's something that, you're getting better at with time. And, if people want to last in this game, I think of podcasting, they've got to refine that and put that in their arsenal as well.
Yeah. And just for people that are listening to this, that want proof in the pudding, I look at my numbers and they have on there how long people listen to the show, like what's your retention throughout the show. Even with the Brandon Turners, monologue shows retention rate is better. And so just, Brandon Turner's probably the top of the interviewers, but everybody's heard his story. Again, another guy talking about how he made his business successful. There's a lot of those out there, right? Not that it's not interesting. I love interviewing people so I can learn new things. But the monologue show retention and people just listening all the way through is so much better than when you have a guest on there. It's actually unbelievable.
Well, you can control the story, right? And that's really what podcasting is in its best form, is storytelling, right? And so, the challenge with like a Brandon or people like that, they have a great story, but it's been told 1,000 times. And so eventually story gets old, no matter how impressive it is. And so, when you do monologues, you can create a new story and you can tell it how you want. And so that's why your retention is high.
Yeah. And it's almost like, you can go in there and be like, nobody's listening. I'm just looking at a mic and I can say whatever I want. And at the end of the day, does it really matter? I'm struggling with this. Here's our challenges, and it doesn't matter because I'm just talking to a microphone until my guy puts it on Instagram and I see it out there, and then you worry about it. So, all right. So it's called The Journey, launching in 2 weeks.
It'll be on iTunes, Spotify, all the major stuff. We'll have all the social pages out there, but it's called The Journey, 2 words. Obviously, everybody knows how to spell it. And it's got a really cool logo. It's got the state of Oregon and the state of Florida weaved in with it. And the website is going to be thejourney.biz. You can go there and kind of sign up as well and kind of get some alerts on it. So that's what it's going to be. It'll be launched in 2 to 3 weeks, and we're super excited about it. And hopefully all you guys listen, and I'll give it a listen as well.
Yeah, you should need a Journey hat, though, when you're doing these podcasts, when you're doing your road show.
Yeah, we'll get there, right?
Yeah. All right, cool, man. Well, thanks so much for coming back on the show. I'm excited. I'm hoping that you send it to me in the next 5 minutes so I can listen to it. So I know it's going to be good. So anyway, thanks again, Tucker.
Yep, appreciate you having me, and hope everybody enjoyed the show today.